Hi everybody, and welcome back to video number 3 in chapter 7. And we were looking when we left off at this $80,000 traceable fixed costs. Now you'll remember if I go back to the television income statement, the traceable fixed cost was $90,000. Now when I break that into segments, we have $80,000 of traceable fixed costs with the regular and big screen divisions shown. And now that $10,000 difference is now a common fixed cost. Okay, the total is still 90,000 and the divisional margin is still 60,000. But you can see here that what we're doing is the fixed expenses that are traceable to one segment can be common fixed expenses if the company is divided into smaller segments. And that's what this example shows. Okay. Now, once a company prepares a contribution format segmented income statement, it can then use the statement to make decisions and perform break-even analysis. So here is that income statement with a 5% increase in sales here and here. So as we ripple that through the segmented income analysis, here's our profit margin, our product line margin for the regular TVs and the big screen TVs. The margin increased by $52.50 for the regular TV and $22.50 for the big screen. And common expenses goes up by $5,000 because we have additional advertising. And so the division margin increases by a total of $2,500. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at computing company-wide and segment break-even points for a company with traceable fixed costs. Now it gets all the more complex here. All right. So our break-even analysis, here's our company and our television and computer segments, subsegments, I guess. And we have a $75,000 operating margin. So now what we're going to do is we're going to calculate the company-wide break-even point. So what we need to do there is compute the sum of the company's traceable fixed expenses and common fixed expenses by the company's overall contribution margin ratio. So how we do that, we're going to go back and get the 170,000 and 25,000. Here's the 170,000 and 25,000 traceable and common fixed costs. We add those babies together and divide through by our contribution margin ratio. And the contribution margin ratio, therefore, results in, we go back here to the 270,000 contribution margin divided by the 500,000 sales for the company in total. Okay, that's where we get the 54%. So we divide that through and we get $361,111. Now, what we do is we'll calculate the break-even point for each business segment that way. And what we do next is we take, for the television, we take our 90,000, which is our fixed costs. Let's go back. Here's the 90,000 for our fixed costs for television. and the 80,000 for our fixed cost for computer. And we divide that by the respective contribution margin ratios. And so we get then 180,000 for television and 133,330 for the computer. Now the contribution margin ratio, therefore, is 120,000 divided by 200,000. And if I go back here, I have the 120,000 here divided by 200,000 here for the computer segment. And of course, if I do the same thing for the television segment, I would take this 150 and divide it by the 300,000 to get the 50% contribution margin ratio. Okay. Now, we will notice that $25,000 of company-wide common fixed expenses are excluded, this 25,000 here, from the segment's break-even calculation because the common fixed expenses are not traceable to segments, subsegments, and are not influenced by these segment-level decisions. Okay. All right, omissions of costs. Costs assigned to a segment should include all the costs attributable to that segment from the company's entire value chain. And so that value chain includes research and development, product design, manufacturing costs, marketing costs, distribution costs, and customer service. Okay. Now, if we fail to trace costs directly, costs that can be traced directly to specific segments of a company should not be allocated to other segments. Also, inappropriate allocation base. Some companies allocate costs to segments using arbitrary bases. Costs should be allocated to segments only when that allocation base actually drives the cost being allocated. Okay. Common costs, fixed costs, should not be arbitrarily allocated to segments based on the rationale that somebody has to cover those common costs. I've heard that many times when I've been explaining how this works. And yes, someone does need to cover those common costs, but it's not appropriate to charge it to the segments. 1, this practice makes a profitable business segment sometimes appear to be unprofitable. I have seen that sadly several times. And number 2, allocating common fixed costs forces managers to be held accountable for costs they cannot control. Not a good practice. Okay, now we have a series of quick checks here, and we'll see how that looks. Here, we've got an income statement for Hoagland's Lakeshore, and it's comprised of a bar and a restaurant. And we're going to assume that Hoagland's Lakeshore prepared its segmented income statement as shown above. So we do have some common expenses and some rather big ones here. And then we have segment margins here. Now the bar is making some money, certainly not as much as the restaurant. So how much of the common fixed expense of $200,000 can be avoided by eliminating the bar? Let's go back. Here's that $200,000 that they're talking about here. And how much can be eliminated? The answer, of course, is none of it. Common fixed expenses cannot be eliminated by dropping one of the segments. Okay. Now suppose square footage is used as a basis for allocating the common fixed expense of 200,000. How much would be allocated to the bar if the bar occupies 1,000 square feet and the restaurant 9,000 square feet? Well, if you did that, 10% of the 200,000 or $20,000 would be allocated. That would be taking 1,000 square feet here and 9,000 square feet there, total of 10,000 square feet. 1,000 represents 10% of the square footage. And if I were to multiply that times 200,000, we would allocate $20,000 to the bar, which of course would be inappropriate. Now, if Hegland's allocates its common fixed expenses to the bar and restaurant, well, what would be the reported profit in each segment? I think you're going to see that the bar is going to lose money. And that's exactly what you see. Here's the 200,000 of fixed common costs, and we would allocate $20,000 to the bar and $180,000 to the restaurant. And as indicated, that would mean the net operating profit for the bar would be a negative $6,000. If someone were to look at that, they might say, "Oh, gee, we should not use the bar anymore." That would be an incorrect decision. So, do you think the bar should be eliminated? I guess I told you the answer to that, and the answer is no. The profit of 44,000 before eliminating the bar, and if we eliminate the bar, the profit's going to drop to 30,000, right? That's the $10,000 difference between allocating here the $20,000 of common expenses to the bar. Okay. Everybody see that? Okay. That represents the end of chapter 7. And when we continue, we will move on to chapter 8. Until that time, bye for now.